Emily had always been a skeptic of the supernatural. She believed that everything had a rational explanation, and that there was no such thing as ghosts or demons. But that all changed when she started seeing the shadow people. At first, it was just a flicker in the corner of her eye, a movement that she couldn't quite explain. She dismissed it as her imagination playing tricks on her. But then she began to see them more often, darting around her peripheral vision like black wisps of smoke. Emily tried to ignore them, but they were always there, lurking just out of sight. She became increasingly paranoid, jumping at every noise and constantly checking over her shoulder. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. One night, she woke up to find a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. She couldn't make out any features, but she could sense its malevolent presence. Emily tried to scream, but no sound came out. Over the next few weeks, Emily's life descended into chaos. The shadow people were everywhere, following her every move. She couldn't escape them, no matter how hard she tried. Desperate for answers, Emily turned to the internet, searching for any information she could find on the shadow people. That's when she discovered that she wasn't alone. There were countless other people who had experienced the same thing, and many of them had even captured photographic evidence of the shadow people. Emily began to realize that there was something very real and very terrifying behind the shadows. She sought out the help of a psychic who told her that the shadow people were malevolent spirits that fed off of fear and negative energy. They were drawn to people who were vulnerable, who had something in their past that they couldn't let go of. With the help of the psychic, Emily learned how to protect herself from the shadow people. She began meditating and focusing on positive energy, which weakened their hold on her. She also started therapy, working through the traumas of her past and finding closure. Eventually, the shadow people faded away, becoming nothing more than a memory. Emily knew that she would never forget the terror they had brought into her life, but she was stronger now, more resilient. She had faced her fears and come out the other side, and she knew that if the shadow people ever returned, she would be ready for them. The moment the family laid their eyes on the antique doll, they knew something was off. It was a gift from their distant relative, who had recently passed away, leaving behind a mansion full of strange and eerie objects. The doll was made of porcelain, with beady eyes and a permanent smile that gave the impression of something sinister. But despite its odd appearance, the family decided to keep it, thinking it would make a great addition to their antique collection. However, as soon as the doll arrived in their home, things began to take a dark turn. At first, it was just small things, like objects moving on their own, strange noises in the night, and an uneasy feeling that permeated the air. But as time went on, the family began to realize that the doll was more than just a harmless antique. They would wake up in the middle of the night to find the doll had moved on its own, sometimes even leaving its designated spot on the shelf to appear in the middle of the living room. The family's daughter, who had taken a liking to the doll, began to act strangely. She would talk to the doll as if it was alive and would sometimes go into a trance, like state, speaking in a language no one understood. The family started to become afraid, and they decided to get rid of the doll. But no matter how many times they tried to throw it away or burn it, the doll would always return, unscathed and in its rightful spot on the shelf. As the days went on, the doll's presence became more malevolent. The family started to experience physical harm, with scratches appearing on their skin and objects being thrown at them by an unseen force. They knew they had to find a way to get rid of the doll once and for all, but they didn't know how. One night, as the family slept, they were awoken by the sound of a child's laughter coming from the living room. When they went to investigate, they found the doll sitting in the middle of the room, surrounded by a circle of candles. Suddenly, the doll's head turned towards them, its eyes glowing red. The family tried to run, but they were trapped by an invisible force. The doll's voice echoed through the room, telling them that they could never escape its grasp. But just as the family thought all was lost, the daughter stepped forward. With tears streaming down her face, she picked up the doll and hugged it tightly. The doll's eyes changed back to their normal color, and its malevolent presence dissipated. The family never spoke of the haunted doll again, but they knew they had been lucky to escape with their lives. The daughter, however, would always have a strange connection to the doll, and would often be caught whispering to it when she thought no one was around. The new house seemed perfect at first. A charming 2-story brick home with a white picket fence and a lush green lawn. It was exactly what the Smith family had been looking for. A peaceful, spacious place to call home. But as soon as they moved in, strange things began to happen. It started with small things. Doors opening and closing on their own. Strange noises in the middle of the night. And items disappearing only to reappear in odd places. The family tried to brush it off as their imagination playing tricks on them. But as the weeks went by, the incidents grew more and more frequent. One day, while the parents were at work and the kids were at school, the house came alive. Doors slammed shut. Objects flew across the room, and the temperature dropped dramatically. The Smiths rushed home, terrified, but found no explanation for the chaos that had ensued. Desperate for answers, they reached out to a paranormal investigator. The investigator arrived promptly, and after surveying the house, she revealed the truth. The house was possessed by the vengeful spirits of its previous owners. The previous owners, a couple who had lost their home due to financial troubles, had died in a tragic accident. They blamed the Smith family for their misfortunes and had made it their mission to make the new occupants suffer. The paranormal investigator advised the family to leave the house immediately, but the spirits were not willing to let them go so easily. They continued to haunt the family, growing more aggressive by the day. The family was trapped, unable to escape the malevolent entities that had taken over their home. Finally, after months of torment, the family decided to take matters into their own hands. They researched every possible way to rid their home of the spirits, from smudging with sage to performing an exorcism. They even considered moving out, but the spirits seemed to have attached themselves to the family, not just the house. In the end, the family found a solution that worked. They conducted a ritual that involved calling out the spirits and asking them to leave the house peacefully. It took a lot of courage and conviction, but eventually, the spirits relented, and the house was finally free of its possession. The Smiths moved out of the house soon after, grateful to have survived the ordeal. They never forgot the terror they had experienced and made sure to warn others about the dangers of buying a house without doing proper research into its history. The memory of the possessed house would stay with them for the rest of their lives.